Backed into a corner, now carrying the permanent stain of a criminal conviction, Donald Trump is proving that a tiger really never changes its stripes, responding to his guilty verdict in the election interference hush money trial, like any mob boss would or wannabe autocrat, with more threats and intimidation. The same person who sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol, a mob that nearly killed his own vice president, said this about the very real possibility that he could be sentenced to house arrest or even prison.
I don't know that the public would stand it. I'm not sure the public would stand for it. With a,
if they tried house arrest or
I think it would be tough for the public to take. At a certain point, there's a breaking point.
Now, to avoid prison or a harsh sentence, Donald Trump might have taken the other path, right? He could be showing remorse for his crimes, at least publicly. He could back off the frequent near daily attacks on the judge overseeing his case, Judge Juan Merchan, as well as Judge Merchan's daughter. He could stop testing the limits of the gag order imposed on him. But of course, this is Donald Trump we're talking about. One former prosecutor tells the Washington Post this, quote, he's almost daring the judge to do it. What are you going to do about it? Instead, though, Trump and his allies are challenging the most basic principles, not just of our democracy, but any democracy, the rule of law. The near daily attacks about a weaponized justice system are happening while the Biden Justice Department puts the president's own son on trial starting today. He's on trial on gun charges that are rarely brought and whose constitutionality has been questioned in news reports in the New York Times and other places. The Bulwark puts it this way, quote, in all likelihood, in fact, Trump got more process than he was due. Nobody in the history of the American criminal justice system has had access to his election donor-funded trial defense team, his supplicant band of congressional Republicans attacking the rule of law and the criminal justice system on his behalf, his Truth Social megaphone of lies, and his compliant Supreme Court majority, who effectively excised Section 3 of the 14th Amendment from the Constitution on his behalf and punted the January 6th criminal trial until after the election in order to craft criminal immunity for him. One of his biggest allies from the so-called Red Tie Brigade, the Red Tie Brigade was there almost every day of his trial, and someone who appeared in court with the defendant is the current Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Well, Johnson is now asking for the Supreme Court, already handing Trump a gift in the January 6th case, to do him a solid in this one. Listen to that.
I do believe the Supreme Court should step in. Obviously, this is totally unprecedented, and it's dangerous to our system. This will be overturned, guys. There's no question about it. It's just going to take some time to do it.
Really? There are signs that this dark vision from Earth 2 is butting up against plain old common sense from those of us over here on Earth 1. Not everyone is buying Team Trump's desperate attempt to spin the first ever criminal conviction of an ex-president and presumptive presidential nominee. Here's a dose of much-needed reality from the rather surprising corner of the culture media universe. Sports talk host and self-described political moderate Colin Cowherd.
Donald Trump is now a felon. His campaign chairman was a felon. So is his deputy campaign manager, his personal lawyer, his chief strategist, his national security advisor, his trade advisor, his foreign policy advisor, his campaign fixer, and his company CFO. They're all felons, judged by the company you keep. It's a cabal of convicts. If everybody in your social circle is a felon, I don't think it's rigged. I don't think the world's against you. And to get people to agree on anything, 34 counts, 0 for 34. I mean, that's a batting slump even the New York Mets could be impressed with. 0 for 34.
In politics, we call that breaking through. It's where we start today with some of our favorite experts and friends. With us at the table, former top official at the Department of Justice, MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissman's back, plus former U.S. Senator, co-host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast, Claire McCaskill's at the table. Also at the table, former lead investigator for the January 6th Select Committee, Tim Heaphy's here. Tim Heaphy, that Bulwark poll, the one that is the gut punch always, is the Supreme Court entertaining immunity so that what just happened in New York doesn't happen in Washington to hold Trump or to adjudicate Trump's conduct around January 6th.
Yeah, we're waiting with bated breath, Nicole, for the Supreme Court to rule whether they reject outright the immunity claim or issue some sort of partial verdict will have dispositive effect on the January 6th case. I've always thought that was the case, sort of the most serious case in terms of the relative culpability of conduct, subverting democracy, preventing the transfer of power. That is sort of the headliner here. And it's getting increasingly unlikely as time passes with no opinion from the Supreme Court that that case could be adjudicated by the election.
It's interesting, though, to see Mike Johnson sort of ride the wave of, yeah, they did us a solid on this, let's do a solid on that. It's like saying it's not even the quiet part out loud, it's the loud part at the top of his lungs.
Yeah, the Supreme Court's not supposed to do anybody a solid. They're supposed to do justice. And look, I give them the benefit of the doubt. They saw this as an issue of significance, of constitutional magnitude that needed to be decided by the Supreme Court. But the fact that it took them a while to make that decision, it took them a while to make that decision.
But did it need to be decided by the Supreme Court? Didn't the appeals court?
They could have said, we agree with the appellate court, which would have been speaking, right? Which would have been deciding that issue of constitutional magnitude without an argument, without a Supreme Court opinion. It would essentially allowed the D.C. Circuit opinion to go into effect. Give them the benefit of the doubt that they believed that some sort of written opinion was appropriate here. But the fact that it's taken a long time to schedule it for argument, to brief it, then schedule for argument, and now weeks after the argument to be decided, increasingly looks like it is going to delay the ultimate adjudication of those cases. And that does, in effect, do the defendant a solid.
When you've got a member who flew 2 flags flown at the insurrection above their house, do they deserve the benefit of the doubt?
No. There's a clear appearance issue. I won't go as far as to say Judge Alito is a supporter of insurrection or aided and abetted insurrection. It just doesn't matter. That's not the standard. The standard is there an appearance issue? And if a Supreme Court justice is flying symbols that were waved in anger at the Capitol above his residences, it absolutely creates an appearance. So for confidence in the court, which is an important value that the court and the justices themselves have to promote, stepping away would obviously be the most appropriate thing to do.
What's interesting to me, and the reason I pressed him on that, is that in smearing the rule of law, they have diminished the people that they perceive to be on their side as well. Right, because the public, Gallup asks everybody, and the other group that's been asking, I can't think of the pollster, but both institutions have support for the Supreme Court at 40 or below of the public. People who think they're doing a bad job is over 60. And the near daily assault on the rule of law is harming even some of the people they perceive in their heads to be their allies.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they are hurting them as much as the Supreme Court has hurt itself.
Right.
The ethical transactions, they own all the ethics problems. That was not foisted upon them. But you're right that the folks who are following Trump down this dead-end alley that our justice system is fatally flawed don't realize what's at the end of that alley. And that is that everyone's rights are impacted.
Right.
And the thing, when they all came out and said, well, now the red state DAs need to go after Democrats, it's like they don't understand how this process works. Why haven't a bunch of Democrats been charged since Trump was convicted? Why didn't they gin up a bunch of charges? Because people who do these jobs know you have to have evidence. And evidence is not a Democrat or a Republican. Right. Evidence is evidence. And no one is going to bring a charge with no evidence. First of all, they could lose their law license. Secondly, they've got a judge they've got to answer to. Third, there's juries that are selected with the input of the defense. So the whole system is set up to protect people's individual rights through a system of checks and balances within our justice system. And part of that is the state system and the federal system, which you see in play in these cases where you have a state system where Trump can't be pardoned if he's reelected. So it's worked so well, and it has been the envy of the world. And I'm going to hold out hope with these two guys because we all three believe in it very much. We've all three been a part of it, that they're not going to destroy it. They are putting it in jeopardy in a way that I think every American should be frightened about.
Well, and what's Trump talking about? The public is, didn't Lindsey Graham say that? Lindsey Graham's calling and wants his Fox soundbite back. He said that already, and the country's still standing.
Well, if you do this, the public won't stand for it. First of all, this is we managed to actually hold that trial there was there were days that we were down there, and there was like one kind of somewhat, let's just say not total, let's just say a sort of representative New Yorker who you might see on the subway was there. There was one guy when I was there. I mean, this huge space for protesters, of which there was one person with a cross and a cowbell. And I was thinking,
That's very New York.
Yeah, and I was thinking, kind of like taking the subway.
Yeah.
And so, we managed to get through all of that without huge protests. The justice system prevailed. I have to say, I want to go back to just your opening, because the contrast of somebody who is basically saying, who is saying, I don't believe in the rule of law. I don't believe in a system where facts matter, where we act out of principle. And what is before us is a president who is living the rule of law. He is living it in in the most personal way. He is not telling DOJ to stand down, which is his power to do. It is a norm the reason he's not doing it. He could tell the Department of Justice, this is what you need to do. He is not pardoning his son, which he could do. These are federal charges.
Right.
He is not doing that. That is a power. He has a power for both of those. He is not doing it because he is living what it means to have a rule of law in this country.
Yeah.
And it is, I mean, if you want to know if he believes it, you could actually see what is happening with his own son. I mean, I'm not saying that he should get credit for it, because it is the right thing to do.
That's the norm, but Trump is beneath it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that the idea that you can't see it, or is that really what's going on, or isn't he telling the Department of Justice to go to get a state prosecutor to bring a state case, when you can see what he is actually living by is his own son is being prosecuted, and he is allowing the norms that are required to live in a democracy to go forward.